Hello everybody, my name is Oaken Bearclaw and this is Infinity Wars. I'm doing a deck showcase today for a redesign of the first deck I put up on my channel, Hehkeem Dredge. Now, if you haven't seen the original video, I would somewhat advise you go and watch it, but I will be covering the basics so you don't have to. I'll put an annotation and a link in the description. So, the cornerstone of this deck is the interaction between Hehkeem the Corrupted and Conscripted Militia. Now, Hehkeem the Corrupted, as you can see, is a 3 purity card. He costs 7, 6 morale when he dies. He is 10 power and 10 health, so he's a reasonably big body. And when he comes into play, all characters with cost 3 or less that are in your graveyard are returned to play. Now, the big note in this ability is they never had to have been in play in the first place. Going straight from the deck to the graveyard is just as effective, and that's what the deck is built around doing. Conscripted Militia is probably the best 3-cost creature to get in large amounts. Individually, they're not great. They're 6 power, 6 health. But they get +1/+1 for each other Conscripted Militia in the same zone. This lets you, once you have enough of them out, this lets you completely control your combat zone of choice, be it attack or defense. Some games you're going to want to pour as much into attack as possible, others you're going to want to play the defense. One of the big strengths of this particular strategy is that you can play the role that's better for you to play. You're not locked into one particular strategy. The other commanders are Patient Zero, simply because he curves very well, going straight from a 7-cost Hehkeem to an 8-cost Patient Zero, or his ability is simply a very, very strong sequential play. The third card in our command is Infectious Zombie. This guy, one of the bigger problems with this deck, at least in initial testing, was its speed, or rather its lack thereof. Flame Dawn decks were often killing it before it could go off. Infectious Zombie is a great way to slow that down. He's 2, if they're stupid with their Inspirants, 3 blocks. Sometimes more. But at the minimum, he's just great against Flame Dawn. You just play him out in turn 2, and they have a hard time breaking through initially. Now, we've got Hehkeem, we've got the Conscripted Militia, we've got a few different cards to get them in the graveyard. The first is, well, Fill the Graves is the one I'll talk about first. This puts the top 5 cards of your deck straight into your graveyard. This, on average, you're going to hit about 2 to 3 militia with this, sometimes more if you're lucky. It's hard but not impossible to win if you don't see one of these. We have enough other ways to get them in the graveyard, and you can always just play them, that these aren't strictly necessary for the deck to run, but they are a massive help. The second card is one of many Exhumed. At costing 4, he only gives 2 cards, so he's only gonna give 1 militia on average, but he's also an 8/9 body in his own right, and that's fairly solid. He's not brought back with Hehkeem, but he's a decent body to attack or block with as you need to. The third card we use is Bury. It's a 1-cost card, and you can take literally any of your creatures and put them straight into your graveyard. This, the obvious use is to, of course, grab a militia, but it has a couple of other uses as well. At Synergize, we carry a second copy of Hehkeem in the deck for a few reasons. One, if the one in your command zone gets assassinated early, you still have an out. You can, because there's one in the deck, you can grab him with Bury and just put him straight into your graveyard to bring back with one of these 2 cards. Raise Dead and Awaken. These are decent enough cards in their own right, but become absolutely amazing when you're getting more than one creature out of it, like Resurrecting Hehkeem. When Hehkeem comes into play, for any reason, you get your entire army of Conscripted Militia back. So if you were lucky and got multiple Fill the Graves or had other ways to get a lot of conscripted militia into the game early on, then an early Raise Dead or Awaken gets out your combo 2 turns earlier than your opponent would be expecting. Secondly, it's a way to reuse Hehkeem. When you set up your combat, put Hehkeem out first. Once he's on the field, he's just a big beater. So go ahead and put him first so that he'll either block, soak up a lot of damage and die, or penetrate through blocks and die, or just do good damage in his own right. But by dying, once the rest of the army ends up going, because sometimes it will, sometimes you're into a mass death, sometimes you're playing against someone who you just need to have a few more than enough creatures to try to break through. Each Awaken Raised Dead becomes another Hehkeem and another full resurrection for your entire army, and that becomes extremely powerful. There are some very, very narrow situations in which you would target an enemy creature over Hehkeem with Raised Dead. Typically, Raised Deads are going to be more Awakens, and if you have them, there's no reason not to run Raised Dead over Awaken. In this deck, it's strictly superior. But if you don't necessarily have the Raised Deads, Awakens are just as fine. You really don't need... The upgrade is very, very minimal, let's put it that way. These guys may look a little weird in here, but they're not really intended to be put out into the field very much. If you absolutely need to, they are an early speed bump for whatever fast deck you're playing against. But their main purpose is, if you don't draw any of these 3, then the fact that they fill your hand lets you start discarding militia out of your hand at the end of your turn. Just don't play anything, let the auto discard put militia in the grave. That's the next best thing, and that gives us a virtually guaranteed way of getting at least a fair number of militia in the graveyard. It's not our best case scenario, but it's much better than the worst case scenario without them. Fear is a 2-cost card that retracts all characters in all combat zones back to their support zones. Usually you're playing Fear the turn before you Hehkeem, or maybe the same turn. Well, you probably don't want to wait till turn 9, but usually the turn before the turn after you play Hehkeem. This lets you Hehkeem brings back your army to the support zone, so that'll either slow down your opponent or give you the time you need to set things up properly so you can mount a good offense or defense. It's also another speed bump, and a pretty significant one at that, for Flame Dawn, which is again a pretty big issue that I think all decks need to consider. Not just this one, but every deck that relies on a slow, strong strategy like this needs to think about Flame Dawn. My numbers are a little weird right now. 20, I would like to run more militia, but I'm not sure what I would cut. So these numbers aren't necessarily set in stone, and it is possible to add in additional other cards depending on what they are. As long as you run the core of the deck, that being the berries, the one-of-many exhumes, the fill the graves, the conscripted militia, and 1 copy of Hehkeem in the command, you could run whatever else you wanted to run in Sleepers, really. This deck just focuses on making the Hehkeem strategy as strong as possible. So, sorry, my nose is itchy. So, I have been experimenting with some other stuff that I'm not sure yet. Someone put forth the idea in chat when I was talking about various things of running Bloodthirsty Dead over Infectious Zombie. Because of the way Bloodthirst works, it could be absolutely incredibly hard to break through for Flame Dawn decks. I'm not going to test it out in this video, but it is something to consider. Also, unfortunately, when you bring back the militia with Hehkeem, they don't become zombies. But I'm thinking that if you built a zombie-heavy strategy, Plague Bear would be good in that if you didn't want to run the militia for whatever reason. If you're focusing on other undead, for instance. Sleeper of Avarak, I don't have enough of them to work with right now because I haven't bothered trading for them. but that might be another possibility. As the longer they're in the graveyard, the stronger they get, and you're usually putting things into your graveyard early on to resurrect them later with Hehkeem. So they might become very, very strong in their own right. But it's something I haven't tested yet. As far as speed bumps go, Zombie Scavenger can be good. I don't like him here, because we're not going to be killing things very often until we go off. There's a lot of cards you could potentially run with this strategy, but this is what I feel is the most fine-tuned that focuses on the Hehkeem strategy. So let's play some practice games and see how things go. Just going to play a single quick multiplayer game to show you guys the deck. Except that the servers just went down. Okay then. Well, I suppose you guys aren't going to get a gameplay video. Sorry about that. I didn't realize the servers were going down soon. In that case, I'll talk a little bit about the upcoming project they're working on. There's been ads for a Star Trek set. The fact that they're a card game that's releasing non-canonical sets that cater to their fan base is, I think, an interesting move. Anyway, without the practice games, this is going to be short. I'll get a practice game video up later on when the servers come back up, or I might just wait on releasing this until I can... Well, nah. I'll put this video up so you guys can see the deck, and then make a gameplay video separately. Sort of like how I split the demon into 2 videos, although I really didn't want to do that. Well, it's not that I didn't want to do that. I'm not going to be doing it the same way. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble. Let me guys know what you think of the deck. The next deck I'm going to showcase is something I'm still fiddling with, but it's a Varori Sleeper deck, but it doesn't follow most strategies. It was actually inspired by one of the opponents I played against a couple videos ago, although I don't know exactly what their deck was. I'm playing with more or less the same basic strategy, but I'm making some pretty heavy modifications to what I saw them play. So while that was definitely the deck I played against, I'll have to double check the name, and I'll give it to you at the start of the video. I'll post what I need to. Anyway, the deck is going to be using a few efficient creatures backed up by a lot of removal, simply keeping the board clear while they're whittled down by some specific creatures. I'll show you guys the deck when I get to that showcase. Shoot, this video's gonna be really short without the gameplay. Oh well. Let me guys know what you think of the deck. If you have suggestions on how to upgrade it further, I'm all ears. I have played with the deck a little bit. I was saving most of the games for the showcase, but the deck does work a lot better than the first version did. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next showcase, or whatever else I happen to play. Bye!